Welcome to my world history notes, where I read from the book that I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible believer looks at world history. It's just a survey, very surface, not deep. Um, you can go deeper, on a particular topic you're interested in. You might not agree with the comments I make. You might even be offended by them. The point is I hope you will have your own opinion of world history and be conversant in it and from your own studies. You can purchase my book on lulu.com, amazon.com, or at the Bible Baptist bookstore, or you can just follow me here. And if you do follow me here, if you can subscribe to my channel, I'd appreciate it. So I'm going to be talk today a few notes on the slave trade. Not very deep. I spend more time on it in my American history classes or talks. Shouldn't say class. It's not a class. Just my discussions. So let's go to my book. Going back to the book by Hugh Thomas, The Slave Trade, it is stated that the British merchants of this era were the world's greatest and most successful slave traders. In the next century, we shall see how the British government tried to destroy that trade. As a side note, the writer of the hymn Amazing Grace, John Newton, spent part of his life before he was saved as a slave trader. The Atlantic slave trade reached its height in the 1780s. State of the art ships hauled about 70,000 Africans per year to ports all along the coastlines of North and South America and the Caribbean, and only about 5% actually came to North America. The vast majority went to refill those death labor camps, basically in South America and the Caribbean. Half of those kidnapped victims were carried by ships flying the flag of Great Britain. William Pitt, the British Prime Minister in 1783, estimated that the West Indies trade, mostly dependent upon slaves, accounted for 4/5 of England's income from overseas and therefore most of its great wealth. So when you watch the 1800s, you see all these fabulous houses and these lords and ladies and their fabulous lifestyles. Just remember that this was built on the back of Black Africans. 2/3 of the slaves carried to the New World were eventually used to make sugar, the most popular tropical product. The immense wealth of the slave trade created innovative new technologies such as copper sheet bottoms on ships that protected them from shipworm and made them sail faster, which did not help the many thousands of slaves who died in transit from cramped, vermin infested conditions, poor sanitation, and even worse food. Let's just stop talking about the good old days, okay, people? Still, even though colonies in the New World thrived on the use of human beings as personal possessions and beasts of burden, there was a growing stir of resentment in Britain and France against the wicked practice that made Europe rich and made the American colonies of England, France, and Spain viable. With the loss of the colonies by Britain that made up the United States, this outcry became even greater. While even great Christian political thinker Grotius and the philosophers Hobbes and Locke saw slavery as containing nothing inherently immoral, there was indignation first, even from the Catholic Church, about the enslavement of Indians. Captured Black Africans had been so used as slaves for so long, it was accepted that their plight was to be a burden carrier for the white European. In the next century, we shall see that things change, and that while some will reject slavery altogether, others will even be more attached to this pernicious hypocrisy of the Christian civilization of the time. It's interesting to note that as hideous as the Atlantic slave trade was, there are considered to be more slaves in the world today than at any time in history, in spite of Paul's condemnation of, quote, men stealers in 1 Timothy 1:10. And while the American and the Frenchman cried out for liberty, this liberty did not extend to the Black African. Now, in all the things we discussed for the last several episodes, I want to point out some things that you should be able to answer about American history, not getting too much foreign opinion. But let's look at that. So, who were the four great captains of the 18th century, and what countries did they represent? Name three great wars of the late 1700s. Who was the last great Asian conqueror who revived Persia's fortunes? Who was Manchu China's greatest emperor? What is the common name of the Catholic Society of Jesus? What is one name given to seagoing criminals? What resulted in 70,000 Africans per year being shipped to the Americans? So these are things that you should consider, you should know, have some idea about, some opinion about. We're going to go to the 19th century, first 50 years, Napoleon, etc., things like that. Next, So I hope you'll stay with me, and I hope you'll have an opinion about world history. I don't care if you disagree with me. I don't care if you're offended by my opinions. But if you have an opinion, if you've studied world history and you have an opinion, you're conversant in it, I'm happy. All right. Thank you.